Recording Session 47, Medical Education Archives, Nebula 9 Station. When I first met a human, I thought our entire medical curriculum needed revision. I adjust my audio recorder, my 4 sensory tendrils twitching with amusement at the memory. My name is Prax Moonwhisper, and I'm a senior medical student at the Galactic Medical Academy. This is my personal account of how humans changed our understanding of medical treatment forever. The day started like any other on Nebula 9. The station's artificial gravity maintained its usual annoying fluctuation during peak hours, making my morning cup of fermented plasma slosh dangerously close to my datapad. The Academy's pristine white corridors buzzed with the usual mix of species: the floating gas bags of Jupiter 7, the crystalline shimmerfolk of Proxima, and US Tendrillions from the Andromeda arm. But today was different. Today we were getting our first human transfer student. Class, Professor Starweaver's voice resonated through our neural receptors, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with excitement. Please welcome Alexandra Blackwood from Earth's Medical Institute. The human who walked in correction, strode in, was nothing like the fragile creatures our xenobiology textbooks had described. Alexandra, or Alex, as she insisted we call her, stood tall with a confident smile that showed off her peculiar flat teeth. Her brown skin gleamed under our educational pod's ambient lighting, and her long dark hair was pulled back in what she called a ponytail, though I saw no resemblance to any tail I'd studied. "Hey everyone," she waved, her 5-fingered hand moving in that strange human gesture of greeting. "Looking forward to learning with you all." Several of my classmates instinctively retreated a few inches. The gas bags condensed themselves into tighter spheres. Even the usually stoic shimmerfolk dimmed their natural glow. After all, our textbooks clearly stated that humans were classified as high-risk species prone to catastrophic physical failures. I raised my primary tendril in question. "Professor, shouldn't the human be in a protective environment suit? Their external membrane is extremely vulnerable to." Alex burst out laughing, a sound that made young Sparkles, our resident shimmerfolk, vibrate in surprise. "Oh man, you guys really believe all that stuff about humans being fragile? Trust me, we're tougher than we look." Professor Starweaver's patterns shifted to a teaching configuration. "Actually, Prax, the human epidermis, while seemingly delicate, has remarkable properties. Alexandra, would you care to elaborate?" Sure. Alex hopped onto a desk, causing several gasps from my classmates. "See this?" She pointed to a mark on her arm. "Got this scar when I was 10. Fell off my bike, patched it up with some antiseptic and a bandage, good as new in a week." The entire class stared in horror. A childhood injury, treated with primitive materials, and she survived? But the emergency protocols," stammered Bubbles, a particularly anxious gas bag, "the quarantine procedures, the tissue regeneration chamber." Alex shrugged, another uniquely human gesture that fascinated me. "Nah, most of the time we just slap some medicine on it and keep going. Human bodies are pretty good at fixing themselves." That's when I knew this semester would be unlike any other. As I watched Alex casually describe what would be considered major medical emergencies for most species, I realized our understanding of xenobiology needed serious updating. "Oh," Alex added, pulling something from her bag. "Anyone want a chocolate chip cookie? Made them myself." The room erupted in chaos as everyone tried to access their xenotoxicity databases at once. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of our education about humans and their bizarre relationship with physical harm. As I sit here recording this, I can't help but chuckle at how naive we were. Because if we thought a simple scar story was shocking, we had no idea what was coming next. End of Session 47, First Impressions section. Note to self-investigate why humans voluntarily consume substances that cause cellular death, and why they call it spicy. Recording Session 48, Medical Education Archives, Nebula 9 Station. The first time we witnessed human emergency response protocols, half the class needed anxiety suppressants. I paused to let my tendrils stop quivering at the memory. It happened during our routine xenobiology practical in Lab Chamber 12. Professor Starweaver had paired us up for the day's assignment analyzing reactive compounds from various species. I got lucky, or so I thought at the time, and was partnered with Alex. She had already proven herself to be surprisingly competent, despite what our textbooks warned about human cognitive limitations. "Pass me that blue solution, would you, Praxax?" Alex asked, carefully measuring something in a quantum beaker. "The one that looks like a liquid sunset." I extended my handling tendril toward the container, but suddenly the station's artificial gravity hiccuped again. The beaker wobbled. Time seemed to slow down as the viscous liquid arced through the air. "Watch out," several voices shouted in unison. But Alex, showing that baffling human instinct, reached out to catch the falling container. She succeeded mostly. While she prevented a major spill, some of the caustic liquid splashed onto her hand. The reaction from the class was immediate and dramatic. Bubbles expanded to 3 times as normal size in panic. Sparkles emitted emergency distress patterns. Professor Starweaver's bioluminescence turned a pale yellow of concern. Emergency protocols initiated, announced the lab's AI. "Preparing decontamination chamber. Medical response team en route. Please remain calm." But before anyone could escort her to the emergency medical pod, Alex did something that made us all freeze in disbelief. She calmly walked to the safety station, grabbed something she called a first aid kit, and started treating herself. "Oh, relax, everyone," she said, running her hand under the emergency wash station. "It's just a minor chemical burn. Nothing some cool water and burn cream won't fix." But the cellular degradation," I stammered, my tendrils coiling in distress. "The potential nerve damage. The..." "Prax, buddy, breathe," Alex interrupted, now applying some kind of primitive organic paste to her reddened skin. "Human skin is pretty good at handling this stuff. See? Already starting to feel better." Professor Starweaver glided over, her pattern showing a mix of concern and fascination. "Alexandra, perhaps we should follow standard safety protocols." "With all due respect," Professor Alex replied, wrapping her hand in what she called gauze, a simple fiber mesh that looked hopelessly inadequate for proper medical care. "This is how we handle minor burns on Earth. Trust me, I've had worse making coffee." "Worse making coffee?" Young Sparkles vibrated in confusion. "You regularly sustain injuries while preparing nutrients." Alex laughed, flexing her bandaged hand. "You should see what happens when we cook bacon. But seriously, human bodies are amazing at healing. This will be fine in a day or 2. The medical response team arrived just then, bursting into the lab with their full array of emergency equipment. They stopped short at the sight of Alex calmly putting away the first aid supplies. But the emergency protocols," one of them stuttered. "Already handled," Alex said cheerfully. "Though I wouldn't mind some pain relievers if you've got them. The human safe ones, please. Last time I took Andromediparin, I couldn't feel my face for a week." As the confused medical team handed over appropriate medication, I noticed something extraordinary. Alex's hand, while still red, wasn't blistering or deteriorating like our textbooks said human tissue would. In fact, she went right back to our lab work, making jokes about having a hot hand today. "I think," Professor Starweaver announced to the class, her patterns shifting to what we recognized as her important lecture. "Configuration, we have just witnessed an excellent practical demonstration of human medical responses. Alexandra, would you be willing to teach a class on these first aid techniques?" "Sure," Alex beamed. "Though you might want to warn the emergency response team first. I have a feeling they're going to need those anxiety suppressants when I show everyone how humans deal with paper cuts." The rest of the lab session was technically about xenobiology, but nobody could focus on their work. We were all too busy watching Alex's hand, waiting for signs of tissue failure that never came. She just kept working, occasionally flexing her fingers or adjusting the gauze, acting as if having corrosive chemicals splash on her wasn't even worth mentioning. End of session 48. Lab Incident Section. Note to self-research why humans categorize injuries as no big deal versus actually a problem. Current hypothesis: their pain threshold calibration is seriously malfunctioning. Recording session 49, Medical Education Archives, Nebula 9 Station. The annual interspecies sports tournament. Or as we now call it, the day we discovered humans are actually insane. I adjust my recording settings, ensuring every detail is captured. It started as a normal tournament. It ended with half the medical staff questioning their career choices. The tournament was held in the station's main recreation sphere, a massive zero-gravity chamber that could be configured for various sporting events. Teams from every major medical academy in the galaxy had arrived to compete. The atmosphere was electric, literally, thanks to the Voltarians from Sector 7. "You're competing in how many events?" I asked Alex, watching her stretch in ways that made my tendrils curl in sympathy. "Just 5, she grinned, pulling her leg behind her head. Zero-G basketball, magnetic field racing, asteroid dodge, combat medicine scenarios, and the multi-species marathon. But those are all in the same day." Bubbles expanded nervously beside us. "The physical strain alone could be fun," Alex interrupted, bouncing on her toes. "Besides, humans are built for endurance. We used to chase prey until it got tired and gave up." That statement caused several nearby competitors to slowly drift away from our warm-up area. The first event was Zero-G basketball. Alex launched herself through the sphere like she'd been born in space, colliding with other players, bouncing off walls, and somehow always emerging with the ball. During one particularly intense moment, she smashed face first into a Gravitonian player. "Medical team to recreation sphere," the announcement echoed through the station. "Human injury protocol initiated." But before the medical team could even grab their equipment, Alex was back in the game, blood floating in little spheres from her nose. "Time out," Professor Starweaver called. "Alexandra, you need medical attention." "Nah, just a bloody nose," Alex said, pinching her nostrils. "Someone toss me a tissue? Actually, make it 2-0 gravity makes these things messy." The game resumed while the medical team watched helplessly, their emergency protocols rendered useless by human stubbornness. During magnetic field racing, Alex crashed into an energy barrier, earning herself what she called a wicked bruise on her shoulder. She celebrated by high-fiving her teammates, explaining that the impact would help the bruise build character. Asteroid dodge was even more intense. Competitors had to navigate through a field of soft, foam asteroids while performing basic medical procedures on robotic patients. Alex got hit in the head 3 times, acquired several new bruises, and still managed to complete a perfect emergency suture simulation. How Sparkles flickered in disbelief. "How are you still functioning?" "Oh, this is nothing," Alex laughed, applying something she called an ice pack to her shoulder. "You should see rugby players. Now those folks are tough." The combat medicine scenarios were next. Competitors had to rescue and treat injured dummies while avoiding obstacle courses. Alex dove through laser grids, rolled under plasma barriers, and at one point used her own body as a shield to protect her dummy patient. "That's going to leave a mark," she announced cheerfully after a particularly rough landing, her arm sporting an impressive scrape. "But treatment protocols," a member of the medical team pleaded. "Just need to clean it and wrap it up," Alex said, pulling out her ever-present first aid kit. "Can't stop now, got a marathon to run." The multi-species marathon was the final event. 5 kilometers through varying environmental conditions, from high-gravity sections to near-vacuum chambers. Most species focused on one environment they excelled in, making up time there while taking it easy in others. Not Alex. She ran full tilt through every section. High gravity? She pumped her arms harder. Low oxygen? She controlled her breathing. Extreme heat? She just sweated. A lot. "Humans are persistence predators," she yelled as she passed me in the observation area. "This is what we're made for." By the end of the marathon, Alex had collected 1 bloody nose, 3 bruises, 2 scrapes, a twisted ankle, and somehow, a black eye. She was also grinning from ear to ear. That, she announced to the stunned crowd, was awesome. "When's the next competition?" The medical team collectively needed a moment to sit down. Later, during the awards ceremony, Alex stood on multiple podiums, her various injuries already showing signs of healing. The other competitors kept a respectful distance, eyeing her with a mixture of awe and concern. "I have updated our medical database," Professor Starweaver announced during the closing ceremony, her pattern showing a mix of resignation and admiration. "Humans are now classified as resilient beyond reasonable expectations." "You know what we should do next year?" Alex said, holding 3 medals while blood still caked around her nose. Add some earth sports. Ever heard of something called rugby? The entire medical staff immediately filed for vacation days. End of session 49, sports tournament section. Note to self-investigate why humans consider activities that cause multiple simultaneous injuries to be, quote, totally awesome. Additional note. Submit formal request to update emergency protocols for human participants to include something called Walking It Off Recording Session 50, Medical Education Archives, Nebula 9 Station. The day of the engineering accident changed everything we thought we knew about human emergency response capabilities. I paused my recording, allowing my tendrils to settle from their excited state. It started during our advanced xenophysiology lecture, when the station's emergency sirens began blaring. Red warning lights pulsed through the corridors of Nebula 9. The station's AI voice echoed through every chamber. Alert. Engineering section containment breach. Multiple casualties reported. All medical personnel report to emergency stations. Professor Starweaver's bioluminescent patterns shifted to emergency response mode. All students remain here. This is not a drill. Senior medical teams will handle. We need to go. Alex interrupted, already packing her medical bag. They'll need every hand they can get. Alexandra, Professor Starweaver's patterns flickered with concern. The engineering section is experiencing toxic atmosphere leaks. The environmental hazards alone. Which is exactly why they need help, Alex said, pulling something from her bag. It looked like a primitive breathing apparatus. I've got my emergency kit, basic protective gear, and more importantly, experience with patch jobs in bad conditions. Who's coming with me? The class stared in shock. Even after months of witnessing human resilience, Alex's immediate readiness to run toward danger was startling. I'll go, I heard myself say, surprising everyone, including myself. Bubbles and Sparkles also volunteered, though their patterns showed clear anxiety. We rushed to the engineering section, Alex leading our impromptu response team. The scene was chaos. A plasma conduit had ruptured, releasing both radiation and toxic gases. The regular medical teams were stuck at the containment barrier, their sensitive bodies unable to handle the harsh conditions. Right, Alex said, strapping on her breathing mask. Prax, your tendrils are heat-resistant, right? You're with me on first contact. Bubbles, you can absorb toxic gases, start cleaning the air around victims. Sparkles, your bioluminescence can help guide evacuation teams. Let's move. She didn't wait for the senior medical staff's approval. Alex simply adjusted her mask and charged through the containment field. I followed, my tendrils wrapped protectively around my core body. The engineering section was a nightmare. 3 Voltarian engineers lay unconscious, their energy fields flickering weakly. A Gravitonian technician was pinned under fallen equipment, their gravity manipulation organs failing. Prax, Axe, help me with this equipment, Alex shouted through her mask. She was already beside the Gravitonian, examining the crushing weight. We need to lift on 3. But the proper protocols for Gravitonian pressure relief require. No time. They're losing gravity control. On 3. 1, 2, 3. We lifted together, my tendrils straining alongside Alex's muscles. The Gravitonian's gravity field stabilized almost immediately after pressure release. Basic first aid now, proper procedures later, Alex commanded, already moving to the Voltarians. She pulled out her medical kit and began what she called battlefield medicine. I watched in amazement as she worked. Alex's movements were precise despite the toxic atmosphere. She used her primitive supplies with remarkable effectiveness, stabilizing the Voltarians with makeshift energy conductors fashioned from emergency blankets and spare parts. They told us humans were adept at emergency response, I said, helping her secure a pressure bandage. But this is beyond adaptation. Humans developed medicine on a death world. Remember, Alex grinned through her mask, sweat pouring down her face despite the cold. Everything was trying to kill us. We got really good at keeping each other alive. More medical teams finally arrived, properly equipped for the environment. They found Alex kneeling beside a wounded crystalline engineer, using her own body heat to prevent their matrix from cracking while applying emergency sealant. Status report, the chief medical officer demanded. 5 casualties stabilized, Alex reported, not looking up from her work. 2 critical but stable, 3 moderate, all prepped for transport. Atmosphere's clearing thanks to bubbles. Oh, and I might need some burn treatment later, had to grab a hot plasma coupling without proper gloves. She said this last part so casually that it took a moment to register. The chief medical officer stared at her blistering hands in horror. You touched a plasma coupling? With bare hands. Well, yeah, Alex shrugged, finally standing up. The crystalline engineer was going into shock, needed to act fast. The evacuation proceeded smoothly after that. All casualties were transported to medical, their conditions stable thanks to the immediate response. Alex finally allowed herself to be treated, though she complained that all the fuss over a few burns was unnecessary. Later in the medical bay, Professor Starweaver gathered our class around Alex's treatment pod. Her patterns showed a complex mix of emotions. Today, she announced, you witnessed why humans are classified as emergency response specialists. While their methods may seem primitive, their ability to act decisively in crisis situations is unmatched. Though maybe next time, the chief medical officer added, examining Alex's bandaged hands, you could wait for proper protective equipment. No promises, Alex grinned, already trying to get out of bed. Hey, since I'm here, anyone want to learn how humans handle emergency surgeries with household items? I've got this great story about my grandfather and a fishing hook. The medical staff quickly sedated her before she could demonstrate. End of session 50, emergency response section. Note to self-update human medical protocols to include restraints not for their protection, but to stop them from trying to help others while injured. Additional note, research this fishing hook surgery story when Alex wakes up. Final note. Request budget increase for human-specific medical supplies. Apparently, we're going to need a lot more of these Band-Aids things. Recording session 51. Medical Education Archives, Nebula 9 Station. Final reflections on the human impact. At Galactic Medical Academy, I adjust my recorder one last time. The curriculum changes have been interesting, especially the new mandatory course Emergency Medicine the Human Way. The lecture hall looks different now. Every student has their own human-style first aid kit. Professor Starweaver's podium displays a poster showing proper bandaging techniques. Even the emergency protocols have been updated with a new first response option. Would a human consider this an actual emergency? Today's lesson, Alex announces to her class, yes, they made her a teaching assistant, is about something humans call the Band-Aid approach. The entire front row of student medics lean forward, their various sensory organs focused intently. Even Bubbles, now sporting what he calls his emergency response form, takes detailed notes. But first, Alex grins, pulling out her datapad. Let me tell you about the time my brother fixed a broken arm with duct tape and a ski pole. Several students reach for their anxiety suppressants. The changes go beyond the classroom. The station's medical bay now has a human solutions cabinet filled with these surprisingly effective primitive tools. Last week, I watched a senior surgeon use something called super glue to seal a minor wound. The patient's shock was only matched by how well it worked. The most valuable lesson we learned from humans, Professor Starweaver tells new students, her patterns showing what we now recognize as amused acceptance, is that sometimes the simple solution is the right solution. The emergency response teams have adapted too. They still bring their advanced medical equipment, but now they also carry what Alex calls a quick fix kit. It saved lives, even if watching humans apply their emergency medicine still makes some of us queasy. Speaking of humans, we're getting more transfer students next semester. The academy had to create new safety protocols not to protect the humans, but to stop them from trying to help when they should be resting. The medical bay now has a special ward with reinforced doors, dubbed the Please Stay in Bed This Time section. You know what the funny thing is, Alex says during our last study session together. Back on Earth, I was considered pretty cautious by human standards. The entire study group stares at her in horror. Cautious sparkles flickers in disbelief. You once reset your own dislocated shoulder. Well, yeah, Alex shrugs. The hospital was like 20 minutes away. Why wait? That's when the station's alert system chimes warning. Human transfer students attempting improvised medical procedures in dormitory section 7. Medical response team requested, again. Alex grins. That would be the new kids trying to demonstrate field surgery techniques. Want to watch? Don't you mean stop them, I ask, already knowing the answer. Nah, their technique could use some pointers. Besides, they're probably just using the sewing kit and some sanitizer. No big deal. As I watch Alex dash off to supervise more human medical adventures, I can't help but reflect on how much things have changed. Our understanding of medicine has expanded in ways we never expected. Yes, we still prefer our advanced technology and careful procedures. But we've learned there's something to be said for the human approach of patch it up and keep going. The Academy's graduation ceremony is next week. This year's class will be the first to receive certification in both standard medical procedures and human emergency techniques. The ceremony had to be modified. Apparently humans have a tradition called graduation pranks that we needed to prepare for. End of final session. Concluding notes: first, human medical techniques, while alarming, are surprisingly effective. Second, humans are simultaneously the most concerning and most reassuring species to have around during a crisis. And finally, I pause, hearing the distinct sound of Alex teaching new students about something called walking off a sprain. In the corridor outside, perhaps our original classification of humans as a species needing protection was completely backward. They don't need protection from the galaxy. Sometimes I think the galaxy needs protection from their help. Hey Prax, Alex's voice calls from outside. Want to help me demonstrate proper splinting techniques? Don't worry, the bone's just a little broken. I sigh, reaching for the human first aid kit I now carry everywhere. Recording ended. Note to self-update medical database classification for humans one final time. New category terrifyingly helpful.